Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Polling from NBC, Washington, and the Wall Street Journal, and ABC and the Washington Post in these last hours, very much changing what looks to be a close election nationally for the Republicans and Democrats for control of the Senate into what you'd have to say a lean toward the Republicans, a decided lean and a strong breeze. That was Stu Rothenberg of the roll calls metaphor yesterday. A breeze, not a wave, a breeze for the Republicans. However, we have the evening to debate this, and joining me is my colleague and friend and co-host, Larry Kudlow of CNBC. Good evening, Larry, and Kudlow Radio on the weekend. The strong breeze just got a lot of help from this polling tonight, Larry. Good evening.
Good evening, John. Yes, it's interesting now. A lot of polls are beginning to break for Republicans, and really in some very key races, and that's what Rothenberg was talking about. But I'm quite interested. Louisiana seems to be breaking the right way. Arkansas, even New Hampshire, where Scott Brown won easily his primary tonight, and Kentucky. It looks like Mitch McConnell is moving ahead. So it's not over till it's over, but right now, advantage GOP.
We're very pleased to be joined by Bill Whalen of the Hoover Institution, who keeps a daily blog. Actually, he updates every hour as far as I can see. He updates to watch these Senate races, and he's been moving slowly through all the major races, 10 or 12 of them. Bill, good evening to you. Your blog is up to date, but now we have the NBC poll showing a 50 to 40% Republican advantage in the states with the hottest Senate races. Does this change your opinion, Bill, or is it more in the same direction? And a very good evening to you.
Good evening, John. Good evening, Larry. It cements what I've been suspecting at some time. For about the last month, I've been telling those who would pin me down and ask me to actually give a prediction that I thought Republicans would get 7 or 8 seats. And what you're seeing with these polls that Larry mentioned is that you're seeing a very clear path to 8 seats, if not more, for Republicans. And how do you get to 8? Well, 3 are off the table as soon as the voting starts. That's West Virginia, South Dakota, and Montana. So then the question now is, how do the Republicans build 5 or more 6 seats upon that? And these polls confirm that. What they show is they show a state like Arkansas, where Tom Cotton has started to open up a minor lead over Mark Pryor. They show Kentucky, which is a Republican hold seat. That's hugely important to Republicans, because for every seat that they can hold, Democrats can't pick up, and Democratic pickup means Republicans have to gain 2 more seats. McConnell, as Larry mentioned, is taking a lead. It's about 5 points. It's going to be tough to overcome that. Then you spread it out and you see leads in states like Alaska. Alaska is now breaking toward the Republicans. That has the New York Times now bumping up their prediction in favor of the Republicans. The New York Times now gives Republicans about a 3 of 5 shot at retaking the Senate. So it may not be a wave in the classic sense of a big breaker, but what you're starting to see now is daylight. And this is a problem for the Democrats, because you look at the megatrends that are involved in 2014, and one of the basic megatrends is that Democrats at all times have a hard time getting turnout in these states. So if you're going into Election Day with Republicans 3 to 4 to 5 points up, going to be just about impossible for Democrats to overcome that.
Bill, just a quickie on this. In terms of the recent movement, really it's the last, almost the last couple of days we're seeing all these numbers coming out. Is it the foreign policy crises in the Ukraine, in the Middle East? Obama has incredibly low ratings now on foreign policy. Is that playing a role? It would be unusual, but is that playing a role?
Larry, I've got a theory, and the theory is that the arrow points to New Hampshire. This is also a Senate state where Scott Brown, about 3 to 4 weeks ago, appeared to be. He was down by double digits in that race, and then suddenly Scott Brown ran an ad on immigration, and he talked about Jeanne Shaheen, his Democratic opponent, of amnesty. And Shaheen also not being in control of the border along with the president, and he closed that race down to 2 points. I mentioned New Hampshire as a bellwether because, number one, he's jumped in with immigration, but secondly, he's got a new ad out now. It's a minute-long ad. It's just on the Internet, but it's attacking the president on his foreign policy. So I think 2 eye issues are now pushing this race in Republicans' direction, so immigration and ISIL.
And this is about immigration. I mean, I agree with you about Scott Brown jumping on that. Oh, so Obama says, okay, I'm not going to do what I originally was going to do, which was make executive decisions to allow a lot of illegals to stay here. But I'm not going to do it because I have to wait to the election, and then I'm going to go ahead and violate constitutional principles. Now, when I heard that on Meet the Press, I just said to myself, that's incredible. And he must have a very low regard for the intelligence of U.S. voters.
Well, I think he does, but again, this is why I'm fascinated with New Hampshire in particular, because that race, it's not the same as a southern race where you can say that you have incumbents in deep trouble in what are Romney-red states. New Hampshire has voted twice for Obama. Jean Shaheen is not that unpopular of a senator necessarily. She's a former governor. She doesn't have any millstones around her neck like the Democrats do in the South, but what the White House saw was that the immigration ad ran, and all of a sudden Brown made about 10 points, and lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, the president comes out and says he's not going to do immigration before the election, and now you see Brown up with an ad on ISIS, and lo and behold, here's the president now tomorrow night going on TV to offer his plan. So I'm not suggesting that the president's reacting to New Hampshire necessarily, but I do think you show a correlation between what Republicans are pushing him on and what the president's forced to react with.
I want to point to the astonishing gap opening for the Republicans over the Democrats in immigration in the NBC poll and in the economy. Larry, there is no expectation that the Republicans would overcome the Democrats in the economy, but immigration, I guess that's the president. But these polls were done, I guess, prior to the president's sudden decision. I guess the news was last Saturday, so it came out slowly.
John, I think that Obama's political analysis is correct, even though his actions are going to hurt him. But, he told Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, he said the politics have changed, and it's true. The whole business on the Mexican-Texas border with all the unaccompanied young kids, however many, 30, 40, 50,000, just changed the whole debate. And now you have a much stronger sense about the need for border security and the need for deportation for those people coming across the border just recently. And probably it's going to damage hopes for immigration reform in the next session. That's the downside. But right now, the Republicans are surging because people are, they don't want this border violation. They want border security. And that's going to be issue number one on immigration. So, yeah, the GOP has always been associated with that position.
Bill, the list here, Montana, South Dakota, and West Virginia are gimmies. They're already decided for the Republicans. So to get to 8, I'll go for 8 because I think 10 is possible here. Louisiana, Arkansas, Alaska, North Carolina, and Colorado. Is that your list, Bill?
That's the list.
And those 5 right now, the only one that remains to my knowledge, in Democratic favor is Mr. Udall in Colorado. And he made an error yesterday that he's paying for.
That's right. So that's 5 right there, John, that I would add on that list. Did we mention Iowa? Is that on your list?
No, I did not. I did not mention Iowa, but that's decidedly gone for the Republican.
It is, and it's probably if I were running Republican strategy, that's the first state I'd probably invest in outside of the South. So add Iowa to the list. You have to add New Hampshire to the list now for
right.
striking distance. Then you're looking at a couple of other states that are a little more of an outlier, but if you're going to have a tide, one is Michigan, and the other one is Virginia.
Our cup runneth over here, Larry.
You think Virginia's in play? That's fascinating.
Virginia, and then if you can add Virginia, then you probably have to add Minnesota too. Look, if Larry, you've been around D.C. for a while. You probably remember in 1980, you had very much the same knockout as this, and it was just Democrats taking hits all around the country. And so I don't know if this happens or not. It's we still have another 8 weeks to go, and things could change or not right now. But the trend could be that wide.
So looking at these numbers, and yes, I want Republicans to take over the Senate. Bill, I would prefer that this surge in the polls was happening a month from now, okay? If this were, October, the middle of October, rather than the middle of September.
No, that's true. I mean, it's the timing, and this is why when you talk about the wave, political scientists, pollsters who follow things closely say that waves traditionally won't really come on board until October. So the fact you're seeing distance right now, don't confuse that with the big surge, but that does beg the question, if you're having a surge in September, will you get a bigger wave come October or not? But I will emphasize, though, that while Republicans may feel confident, and Larry, you and I talk about this almost every time we get together, they still lack a few things, one of which is they still lack a compelling vision for what they would do if they had control.
We'll talk about that when we come back, and also that the president is going before the American people tomorrow to make an appeal over something that is not integrated into his last several years, and that's bombing in Iraq. Larry Kudlow, CNBC, my colleague and co-host, also Kudlow Radio on the Weekend, and Bill Whalen of the Hoover Institution. I'm John Batchelor.